Thank you. Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm Rachel Levine. I'm the Missing Maps Program Coordinator for the American Red Cross. And you guys are my first Geo Week event of the year. So that's really exciting. I'm so excited to start my favorite season. And I love that it's expanded outside of just the weekend, GIS Day. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to share a presentation and just tell you more about Missing Maps and kind of the collective and how we organize together. You guys already did your training, right? I'm not quite sure what project you guys were working on. I just got a chance to chime in. So what I'm going to do is share my screen, but I just wanted to give you a heads up that my internet is being a little bit wonky. So if you don't hear from me or if I drop, I'm so sorry about that. But if someone could chime in if you lose me, just so I know that I've lost you, that would be super appreciated. So I'm going to take over the screen share. I'm going to share a PowerPoint. And I'm going to tell you more about the program. And we're a nice group of friends here today. So if you have any questions, I'm going to try and get to those. The presentation is only about 15 minutes. So if you have any questions about the project, what else we have going on for Geo Week, how we operate as a collective, any of those things, I'm happy to answer those too. So today you guys are learning more about OpenStreetMap, which is the platform that we use. OpenStreetMap has really exploded after the last couple of years. It started about 15 years ago, and a guy wanted to go on a hike. He didn't want to pay the government for information on trails, so he just made his own database, and his friends started like, oh, I'm going on a hike too, and I'm going to stop for a coffee here, and then I'm going to get a beer there. And it has turned into this wonderful beast of a platform. It's still all volunteer led, lots of companies and other places use it, but it's still really stuck to that original idea of people adding information about places that they know. I think OpenStreetMap hit its record 5 different times in July for most mappers of the, like in a day, something like that. But it knocked itself out of the park like 5 different times in a week and a half, something like that. So if you're experiencing problems, there is no IT department. You can be like, help me, please. We're all just trying to figure it out together. So this is what it looks like pretty much right now, right? We see parts of the world light up with data, but we're still missing huge parts of the world where people live, where we just don't know what is where they get their groceries, right? Where they access healthcare, all of those things. And this is what the map looked like in 2014 when Missing Maps started. So we can see that the tool itself only 6 years ago was really focused on North America, Europe, Japan, and New Zealand. And so we're really, really growing and fleshing out the tool to make sure it has information for communities all over the world. And that's with communities all over the world, which I think makes this tool unique. So we are about 20 organizations that make up Missing Maps. We're a collective. It's really a partnership. And it was formed in 2014 by the American Red Cross, the British Red Cross, HOT, the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, and Médecins Sans Frontières. About a third of all groups are now Red Cross societies. We're also really heavy with academic organizations like GW and Youth Mappers, which is about 150 different college groups now and growing. So if you'd like to start a club, you can get some funding for that club via their grant, which is pretty cool, and connect to other people in academia. So what do we do, right? What do we do as the Red Cross with the data? Really what we do at the American Red Cross is we work with our partner national societies to build capacity in those national societies to both use spatial data, grow spatial data, and really use it in a decision-making capacity. So this is Haiti with our team in Indonesia, in the PMI team. And we've been working with folks like Haiti, information management officers in national societies to really grow capacity locally, so that they can work with their decision makers to both figure out where there's gaps, fill those gaps, and then use that information to make decisions both for long-term projects and in case of disasters. So we've been working with Haiti for a while now. And when they had a difficult cyclone season and earthquakes all in one go last year, they were able to say, okay, we have this information, let's use it, right? And they can control and manage that and grow that locally within the national society. And that's really our goal, um, with our missing maps and with our program called SIM, Surge Information Management Support, is to really provide some remote support, but really grow that local capacity so it does remain remote support in difficult times. So OpenStreetMap, I've mentioned it a bit already, but you're probably using it, right? I don't know if anyone has taken an Uber recently. That's normally my example. But all of these apps and all of these platforms that you're using are pulling from OpenStreetMap. And the main difference between OpenStreetMap and other platforms like Google Maps or something like that is that um, we control the data, right? So if your Uber is dropping you at the wrong place, check OpenStreetMap and see if, it doesn't really look right for your neighborhood. But if you've ever checked the Weather Channel or gone to a Wikipedia page with a map on it, all of those things are pulling from OpenStreetMap. And now more than ever, right, when we want to support our local businesses, if you're shopping on Etsy or similar websites, you might be having OpenStreetMap data in that kind of platform. I know I've personally been using it for trails recently as well. Um, so why might a community be missing from the map? We have kind of two big points with the Red Cross that we want to make. A community might be missing from the map because a commercial establishment hasn't paid attention, right? A commercial establishment's goal is mostly profit, right? That's why you have companies, for-profit companies, right? So this is a community, Gakadu in Guinea, and it's been around forever. People have lived there for generations, and this is what the map looked like back in 2014, 2015. And after the Ebola outbreak in West Africa, we set up a mapping hub, and Gakadu is a great location for it. So the mapping hub really worked on fleshing out the map in their area. And this is what the community looked like at that time. And you can see that it was already, of course, a vibrant place. It just wasn't represented on the map because there hadn't been interest from commercial establishments because they knew they couldn't make profit from gathering that data, right? So with OpenStreetMap, we don't have to worry about that. Another reason a community could be missing from the map is because of movement, right? So after the Haiti earthquake, about 10 years ago now, people left the capital, and either they couldn't rebuild financially, it was not an option, or there was really no place to put the materials to rebuild, right? So they moved to the hillsides. And this is a community called Canaan that was mostly empty before the earthquake, and now it's vibrant and thriving, right? So how do you plan infrastructure support for a new community, right? First, you understand where they grew, then then you can understand all the things that need to accommodate that growth. So missing maps, when we're doing community mapping, is a three-step process. First is volunteers like you guys all over the world come together to build out the base map, build that data that we can grow from. Second step is when people with local knowledge add their knowledge to the map. And third is when humanitarian organizations, local leaders, decision makers, individuals use the data to make a decision or to inform something or to know more about that community. So these events happen all over the world pretty much every day now. We have had about 115,000 volunteers to the program now, which is amazing. Um, and these are happening at Red Cross offices all over the world. So this is the Mali Red Cross in the top. This is with some of our supporters in Nashville, Tennessee on the right. And on the bottom is my old office where we said, hey, everyone, we really need help. There's been an earthquake, everyone come help us. And then we crashed our Wi-Fi. So that's one of the great things about working from home now and everyone's studying from home is we don't have to worry about that too much, do we? So lesson learned there. Like I mentioned, we have about 115,000 volunteers for the program over 6 years across all the NGOs that are participating. And really that's where the power of the program comes in, is that we can support each other, right? So if I am working in a community as the Red Cross and MSF is working as the community and the OSM community is working there too, and the university is working there too, right? We can join together to say, what's our goals? How can we each reach a part of this goal to reach the bigger goal? And that's really why the collective, I think, is so magical, because we work so well together to really scale up in a way that no individual organization would be able to. And because we use these open source platforms, that information doesn't stay with us, which I think is the key point of the program. So what does it look like when we're doing our community mapping? Um, we know our communities best, right? The world over, you know what makes you happy, you know what makes you feel vulnerable, you know where you get your resources. So the first thing we do is we grid out the community, um, and we tell them what we're doing, right? Why are we here? What are we trying to capture? What do we need to know? So here we are in Hoi An in Vietnam. We're working with the Red Cross. We're training up their teams from across the country so that they can go back into their communities and do this locally. So the first thing you'll see is we gridded out the community, right? Then on the right, you'll see people headed out to their square in their branding so that they can go capture their data. And on the bottom, we see people communicating with the uh, owner of this property. Is this residential? Do you sell something here? What kind of stuff do you sell? How can someone connect to your business? That kind of information. And I think it's super, super important that people know why you're collecting the data, right? So we do information campaigns ahead of time. And the word spreads, right? So day one, if you're, knocking off that first square, by the time you reach square two, people are kind of waiting for you with that information. And if you're lucky, a snack. So, how do we actually capture the data? It really depends on who we're working with and honestly the weather. If it's raining, we might put a phone in a plastic bag. If it's nice and sunny, a beautiful day, we might use a paper resource so that we don't get the glare on the phone. The paper resource is called Field Papers, and you'll see it's just a printed out version of OpenStreetMap. So we can annotate it, put it back as a layer into OpenStreetMap, and add that information. The app on the phone is OSM and, which lets us add information directly into OpenStreetMap. There's a lot of them out there. It really just depends on your needs. We also use Open Data Kit, and we use Open Drone Map to collect and process our drone imagery as well. So this is just a really quick thing of what does it look like when we annotate the map, right? You'll see that what we're looking for in our pre-mapping is really those nice even shapes so that people can make changes quickly and easily as need be. So the things we're adding are the things that we can't see from satellite imagery. Pathways this was for fire prevention, right? How could a fire person get to number 47, for example, right? We also noted when things were residential versus when things were commercial, and danger points, as well as public health facilities like toilets and clean water access points. So all the things you miss from satellite imagery that we can quickly turn into a layer using that code on the bottom, and then digitize that when we're back in the office. So step 3, what do we do with the data? One thing, and this is not a biased statement, but one thing the Red Cross does better than any organization in the world is social mobilization, because one person out of every 500 around the world is already connected to the Red Cross, right? That reach is just not found in any other organizations. So what we do is we let people know about health programs. This is Anton, one of our volunteers, and the community already knows him. So there was a measles vaccine campaign in that community, and he said, okay, well, let me think about where all the kids under 5 are, and let me go get them, right? So the parents don't need to leave their place of business, whether that's like a retail shop where they need to keep open, or farming, where they really need to work on, whatever it is they're working on that day. They can count on people like Anton to come pick up their kids, take them to the clinic, and drop them off, because Anton is trusted and known in that community. And he knows, especially when we can help provide maps to say, okay, here's my region for the day. Let me pick up everyone under the age of 5, drop them right back off. And you can see the little ones even get rides. So other programs we support is our Restoring Family Links program in the US. It's called International Family Tracing globally, but the Red Cross has a mandate to help you find people, whether it's due to war, natural disaster, or just time that you've lost. So after Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico, we realized we didn't really have a good building footprint of the island. We can do things like work with our data partners like Facebook to say, where were people logging in before the storm? Where are they now not logging in from? Where is that behavior change? And can we pick up trends? So one thing we noticed is there were huge parts of the island where we had a lot of activity before the storm, none after. So we can make assumptions like they might not have power there, right? They might not have connectivity there. And we can send out mobile hotspots. So that's one thing that the Restoring Family Links team is doing more and more of these days, is providing that communication technology. When something happens, it's not war, it's not food, water, shelter that people want first. It's to know that their loved ones are okay. And once you know that, you can focus on the rest. So we set up mobile hotspots, and we use the information from OpenStreetMap, from those behavior change models, to see where to send those stations. Another thing that we've been doing for about 3 years now is working with our community epidemic and pandemic preparedness project. We were preparing for an unknown, and surprise, now it's a known, right? So we've been working on this project for about 3 years now with about 8 different national societies. And the CP3 project is, I think, one of our most important ones right now. And really what we're doing with that project is we're trying to understand where the gaps in data are that would have been helpful in past pandemics, and we're trying to capture that data now. So you'll see the map here is something that we did from Gekadu in Guinea, like I mentioned earlier. When the Ebola outbreak of 2016 happened, we worked with our partners at MSF and we said, why did it happen for so long, right? This was 2 years of an outbreak. Outbreaks of Ebola happen often, but this one was bad and long. What happened? And one of the issues was it crossed borders, right? So we know our communities, we know our neighbor, we know our rivals potentially, right, in California, but we don't know that next step. We don't know over the state line so much, right, or over the country line. So we realized that we were losing people with data tracking when they crossed borders. When people went to the MSF clinics, we were only able to contact trace 2 out of every 10 patients. And when someone says, hey, I'm from LA, you know, they have to know where LA is to go and say, who were you in touch with, right? Let's make sure everyone is safe and sound in that place you just left to get to the clinic. So we set out to map a 15-kilometer buffer zone between Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Liberia. We thought there would be about 5,000 communities in that buffer zone, and there were 7,000, right? So not only did we not know the name of the community, we didn't know that it existed in some cases. So people from the Red Crosses went out on motorbikes and collected that data. And that really helped inspire our CP3 project, which we're in the middle of now. We have been working in particular in DRC, Guinea, again, Kenya, Uganda, and Indonesia. And one thing that I think is just so timely with this project is that the data we collected over the last couple of years is now being used to plot out loss stations. So when we know where people live, when we know the need of the current pandemic is, hand wash stations and those hygiene centers, we can figure out where to place them, where they have maximum reach. So we're using that data in real time while we're still collecting it to support those national societies and that data gathering, that data need for COVID, even though that wasn't what the program set out to tackle. So I mentioned drones before, but really one thing that we're doing with this program, is exploring new technologies, right? Mapping and crowdsourced mapping is a new thing. So we are working on using drones to capture imagery in places where we need really fine details. And you can see this picture was taken in the Philippines, and you can see just how much buy-in there was from the community that when the drone went missing, all the kids knew what we were doing. They knew why we were doing it, and it came back the next day. Someone found it and brought it right back, right? So that social mobilization for our work through the Red Cross is just so important because we're learning new things, right? So here we see we originally captured the drone imagery because we wanted to see after a cyclone, did the new housing that was built last 2 cyclone seasons, right? We wanted to count the red roofs. We wanted to see the sustainability of that product and see, should we make changes? Do we need to invest in anything? And now you see the picture in the top is actually their emergency evacuation route planning outside of City Hall. So everything we do with Missing Maps has many purposes. And I think that's one of the things that makes it a unique program. So originally, we didn't really know what kind of beast Missing Maps would turn into, right? We had a goal of mapping the communities of 20 million people by 2020. And that was our first big goal. We hit that in the first 18 months of the program, which is amazing. And this is our team out of Gekadu at the Mapping Hub. So we set a new goal of mapping the communities of 200 million people by 2021, and we hit that goal in 2019, which is great. So our new goal is really just to be on top of validation and making sure all that information can stay up to date, is nice, and reflective of the communities as they exist today. As you guys know, they're changing, right? That shop around the corner might not be there anymore. The hours of your favorite restaurant have changed. Um, you might now order via an app and then you stand outside, right? I think OpenStreetMap is so great because it has accommodated so quickly to include that kind of information, right? So local people can support local institutions at a global scale. So thank you guys so much for your time. I think I'm actually at about time. Happy to answer any questions that have popped in. I didn't list your project because I don't know what it is. So um, I'm happy to talk about it if I know more about it. But thank you guys so much.
Hey, look, Rachel, thank you so much for signing in to chat with us about this. It's really, really helpful. And you know, we've been doing this kind of as a little satellite thing for 4 or 5 years now. It's great to have someone who knows more about these things come in and actually, you know, tell us, because we, you know, we in some ways we're reaching a little in the dark. And this whole process, this time round, given the fact that it's all COVID related, you know, COVID constricted. It's all a bit of a learning experience. So I'm going to open this up. If anybody has a question they'd like to ask Rachel, just throw it into the chat and I will happily pass it on. And while we think about that, I am going to ask you a question, Rachel.
Sure.
Clearly very experienced with this process. Many of the people in this event are going to be doing this for the first time. Advice about not feeling super nervous when you're editing a worldwide global map.
Yeah. So my best advice for you is make guesses if they're educated guesses, right? And then also, it's going to be a guess. You know that, right? Our process includes validation. We are always looking for validators, and we hope you grow into being one. But right now, you can lean on our current validators to give everything you do a look, and also to keep in mind the priority attached to your project. If it's an urgent priority project, not a great place for a new learner, right? But if it's a lower priority, medium priority, understand that that process is in place to give everything you do a look and make sure you're on the right track and that that data is nice and clean before someone uses it. So my best advice is make educated guesses and to understand you're part of this much bigger community who has your back. So lean on them, but give them the best you can, right? Educated guesses, not regular guesses, and lean on that community. And I hope you grow into other roles in that community too.
Excellent. I'm glad you said that because that's what I told them too.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions here. One is, what's the process for the Red Cross for submitting OSM projects that people can then engage in?
Sure. So, if you have a project, so the American Red Cross, like I mentioned, we all kind of give some good energy towards missing maps, and we're not the ones who manage the tasking manager. That would be hot. So join the hot community. I'm wearing a lot of different hats today. One of them is a hot community voting member, and we have trainings that you can do to set up projects. And there's folks in the community who can help you navigate. Does this community need a project? What kind of advice should you have for your instructions, that kind of thing. So if you'd like to create a project, you have a couple different options. You can use the hot tasking manager, but there's also one for the US. So the OSM US community is really strong, really active, really wonderful. So if you'd like to make a project in the US, that's an option for you as well. And the organizer is called Maggie, and she's lovely, and I'm sure she'd be willing to help you on that one as well.
All right, I mean, that's tremendous. And it's always nice to know that there are, you know, there are things locally that we can engage in. We don't have to necessarily sort of head overseas. I think the essence of the question was very much about, can you identify like Red Cross oriented programs? And of course you can. There's a filter system in HOT to do that, right?
Yeah. So a little bit about the filter. So I work for the international department of the Red Cross, right? So that's why through Missing Maps, you will find the American Red Cross international programs. And we actually support the IFRC, which is kind of when we're all working as countries together.
The Federation.
Yeah, the Federation of National Societies. So a lot of our projects, we help out by making those tasks and managing those tasks and bringing volunteers towards those tasks. So if you filter to the American Red Cross, you'll probably find lots of projects for either CP3 or our work with the Climate Center. So if climate change is something you're particularly interested in, a lot of our Climate Center projects might interest you. And that's for our forecast-based financing so that we can kind of understand how our communities fall into place in certain coastal communities. And then we can run models for things like mangrove growth or whatever it may be, and make those decisions when we understand the effects before we just say, I bet this will work, right? So the filters are super helpful. You can also look at a map view if you're interested in a particular part of the world and see everyone who's working in that area.
Okay, and one very enthusiastic question here, which is, let's say you've totally drunk the Kool-Aid and you're all in. What's the process to become a validator? I mean, how long do you need to be engaged before you get to that stage?
Ooh, I love it. So depending on how you want to engage with the community, we at the American Red Cross happen to be opening up a formal volunteer role for validators in the next couple weeks. So
Ah,
I would say, let me finish posting that, and then I'll make sure to share it with your organizers who can share it with your network. Every
okay.
year, I know with this competition in particular, this year we're working together for a goal, I hear. So not a contest, a shared goal. We have so many awesome mappers who reach these really great mapping numbers. So if you want to look into being a validator, you can, there's lots of YouTube videos that we link to on the Missing Maps page, or if you want to do it more formally through like an actual curriculum that we run at the American Red Cross, we can get you that link. We have meetings every Friday and we use Slack. So there's lots and lots of different ways you can engage, whether it's in the formal role or in the informal role through OSM US or through HOT.
That's great. I'm very aware of the fact that you're taking time out from other meetings
It's,
to come and talk to us.
you
But we
know
do
what,
have
this
one.
one's more fun.
We have one actually very interesting question, certainly from my perspective at least, because I deal a lot with sort of personal identifying information. So the
Mhm.
question is, what safeguards does OSM have in place to maintain some level of privacy in the collection and distribution of data?
Yeah, so people always choose, I want this information shared, right? When we're working with local leaders, especially if we have someone who's kind of like I'm the guy or the lady in my town that people go to. So it's okay if I put Rachel's house right there on the map, right, with my phone number. So I think some of it is really a personal choice, right? And if you're choosing to put that on the map, someone might take it off because it's similar to Wikipedia in that, bad data doesn't last long. I would
Right.
say the bad data and missing that bad data, right? It's a lot of like how do we want to tag this? We can have option A or B. Half the community wants A, half want B, so let's just change each other's stuff, right? It's not so much the map vandalism side of it. So people do put their personal information on there. Someone's probably going to take it away pretty quick. Um, and in general, we do a ton of safety and security trainings with the Red Crosses as we're building up capacity, right? We think about things like military installations. We always make sure when we're working with either refugee camps or shelters, things like that. Do you want your information on the map, right?
Mhm.
Do you want a name but no contact info? Do you want contact information, right? Is that important to you that you share that out? Do you just want building and that's it, right? But you want to make sure your building is on the map so people can navigate there. Do you want an address, but that's it, right? So we always have these conversations with the people we're mapping and with the infrastructure that we're mapping to make sure that that's their decision to make and that they have everything they need to make an informed decision.
It's clear an organization involved in this kind of stuff clearly has to have a lot of protocols in place to do that. So, but it's good to hear them. It's good to hear them sort of enumerated for a community that like ours, which wishes to engage, but we are remote in every sense of the word, right? So we
Yeah,
have. I'll give you the last question because I don't want to keep it
sure.
too long. But there's a question here. It's about becoming a validator on the ground, and actually it connects to this idea of you mentioned volunteers help to make the maps. You mentioned actions are taken, like making evacuation plans. Are there ways in which you can help to create these types of activities? I guess it's a more involved role, right?
Right, right. So a couple things I just want to point out. So we as Missing Maps are actually working on some guidance to share with the wider community for safety and security, right? Right now, we're kind of at an institution to institution level for communications, or community to community, maybe even. And we understand that we're a different beast than what we started, right? So we're working on publishing that so that other people and other groups, whether that's researchers or Red Cross chapters or whoever it happens to be, can pick that up and doesn't have to necessarily participate in Missing Maps at that collective level to get all of that knowledge um, that that we have in those best practices. So that's one thing I would encourage you to check out when I publish it, which is probably December. So we're really excited to launch that, and that'll be in 4 different languages. So we're just working on translations now. But there's a million different ways you can get connected and to participate. I would say join the OSM US Slack if you'd like to participate locally. They have like channels, if you're familiar with Slack, with most states and even particular parts of states. And you can see what other people are working on and kind of where those gaps may be. And they have really specific channels for things that you might be interested in, like health or trails or this or that, right? And I would definitely say get in touch if there's a local youth mappers chapter too, because they might be working on a more organized strategy for your area as well. I want to say there's some in California. I just don't know off the top. I know there's some in California. I just don't know off the top of my head what they may be. But in terms of validating local data, just understand that this is a open source community, and shoot your shot, right? If you think something should change, go for it. And what I would ask you to do is in the comments section, just write why you think that that's the better answer, right? If your local bodega changed from 24 hours to new COVID hours, write that down, right? COVID change, here you go. And say visited October 28th, right? So just tell the community why you're making the change. Then that's, I think, the best way to go about doing local validation is communication. And you should be good to go. It should be super appreciated.
Good advice for just about everything we do in life, right?
Right.
Communication.
Yes. Yes.
Well, look, so Rachel, thank you so much for spending so much time with us. We really appreciate it. And hopefully everybody learned a lot from that. I certainly did, and I've been doing this for several years. So thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much. And I saw just a couple
Thank you.
quick questions in the chat. You have to be 13 to make your account. And the one thing I really do want to mention is AI and ML is going to be a huge part of how we work going forward. You're totally right. That can definitely help us. But it ends up we're still smarter than computers, especially when it comes to response work. So we are excited to explore the potential, but it is not ready to go for response just yet. But we hope soon enough it will be. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them over email. James has my contact, but thank you guys so much for everything you're doing today and every year to contribute to OpenStreetMap. And happy almost Geographic Education Week. I was really happy to kick off my season with you guys. So enjoy the rest of your time. Thank you for your mapping, and talk to you later. Bye.
Yeah, thank you so much.